All right, so I'm Detective Kyle Van Amen. A little bit about me: I've been a police officer about 7 years. Started the Christ City Police. You guys know what Christ City is? It's a great place, right? So I was there for about 2 years, and then we decided to move closer to my wife's family, so that's Logan. But I've been patrol. I've been for about 5 years. They had me over at Mount Logan Middle School, where I was the SRO there for last year, and now they moved me over to major crimes. So that's what I do right now. I do a lot of other things with police department. I teach Nova. I do internet crimes against children. Member of SWAT team. So we do a lot of things. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background on my experience. So as far as I just want to start out saying, you guys, this whole gathering and thing, I think it's really cool. It takes a community to help protect its own little community. The more eyes and ears that we have out there as law enforcement really help us. A lot of time when we respond to calls, it's because citizens call it in. We don't just, very rarely do we happen onto crime. We don't catch a burglar at the scene, or you wouldn't even know what's happening if it wasn't for citizens. So it's really cool to see everybody here united to try to help prevent crime. So as far, we'll touch on some property-related crimes. When I say property crimes, I mean like thefts, vandalisms, vehicle burglaries, things like that. As far as vehicle burglaries goes, try to think almost like a criminal, right? Most of the time we see burglaries, it's a crime of opportunity. What I mean about that is they're just going around checking door handles, waiting till they find an open door. And then they find an open door and they just take whatever they feel is valuable out of that vehicle. So the best thing you can do is take the valuable things out of your vehicle. If you do have them in there, try to hide them or conceal them inside your vehicle. Don't keep important documents with the vehicle inside, such as title and things like that. And locking your doors, locking your vehicle doors, not leaving extra sets of keys or keys in the ignition of the vehicle. That'll help as well. And then also to help us, if you are a victim of a vehicle burglary, try not to touch the vehicle. I say that because there's a lot of evidence that we can gather from the vehicle if it's not tampered with or contaminated, such as like a steering wheel or door handles or things like that. Because we can gather fingerprints and even DNA off of steering wheels and things like that. So if you are a victim of a crime, try to preserve that crime scene as best you can for us, so that we can process it and get it. Keeping your house safe. Floodlights are a great idea, motion detected, or just leaving them on. Generally, we don't see criminals go in areas where it's well lit. So the same thing with a vehicle. If you can park it under a street lamp or a place where it's well lit, it will help prevent it. Keeping your garage door. Garage door is a little tricky because it's hard to secure a garage door, right? But making sure it's shut, making sure all the doors and windows that access your garage door are locked and secured. You can lock them. In a personal house, I have like wooden dowels in my windows that are at the ground level to ensure that nobody can open them. But floodlights, motion detected cameras, things like that. I know Ring doorbells are a huge thing nowadays, and camera systems are. They're awesome, and they've helped us solve a lot of crime, or they help us gather a lot of activity. So if you guys have those, make sure they're active, and I know you can set filters on them to make sure that you capture, I know it's annoying to watch people walk on the sidewalk and get an alert every time, but you never know if that person may be involved in a crime somewhere else, that we can gather a description based on your Ring doorbell. There's other ones that I personally have Blink. It's an Amazon company. They're a little bit cheaper. I like them though. They're motion activated and things like that, so that's what I have. Trying to think. You guys have any questions as far as how to secure a house or a vehicle or anything like that? Yes. That's a good question. Yes, absolutely. Because usually they're like walking down the street like this, right? And they'll be checking door handles. So it might not be your vehicle that had anything taken from it, but it could be could get really good fingerprints from your vehicle that we might not get from another vehicle, right? So yeah, call it in. It's great as far as we do crime mapping too. So if we see a lot of burglaries in one particular area, we try to focus on that, or look at individuals that may live in that area or frequent that area. So it does help us just for statistics wise, even if we don't miss anything, we can try to gather DNA and things like that. So one thing I was going to touch on too is when you guys start doing your watches, or you see some suspicious activity or things like that in the neighborhood. So if you see, let's say you see a vehicle burglary happen, don't approach the individual. Try to be the best witness you can. And by what I mean is gather a lot of information about that individual, height, what they're wearing, any other identifying marks such as tattoos or things like that. Don't approach them. Call it in as quickly as possible. If you do follow at a very, very safe distance so that they don't know you're following, because I'd hate to have a confrontation happen where somebody gets hurt. Usually when people commit these type of crimes, they really don't care, obviously, about other people, so they're usually dangerous, so try to stay away from them. As far as suspicious vehicles go in the neighborhood, license plates, getting the license plate helps us out immensely, and then trying to maybe, if you can, just get a description of the driver. So just gathering as much information as you can, being a really good witness for us, so that we can help our investigation, because there's some minute details about different vehicles that may make or break a case. We had one where a vehicle was stolen, and the owner said, yeah, there's this very unique paint chip on the bumper, and we found the vehicle, and we were able to confirm that was the vehicle by the paint chip, because we had no other information. We found it like later that day, so it was really cool to help just get that little detail. Yeah.
Just to turn them down.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are more like more people who are really involved in criminal activity, that really think about that type of behavior, that they would go out and do some surveillance before they commit the crime. Those are the more dangerous ones. We do see that. A lot of what we see is just crime of opportunity, right? There'll be like a bike left out, and then they're walking by and they see the bike and say, I'm going to take that bike. And they wouldn't normally if it was locked up or things like that. So it's just they're given an opportunity to commit that crime, and then they commit that crime.
Well, it's just like this lady was saying that my car was, and I never called about it, but it was driving through. And they pulled a lot of stuff out. There was like stuff out of the concert. And I had nothing in there. But then I was talking to the lady, Jeannie or Jenny. She was saying they could get information and registration as well. You said no title, which is, yeah, I put my firebox, but I had the registration, insurance, card, inspection, that kind of stuff. Is that true? They could.
Should we not have that in there? I mean, I know we need to have an insurance card, right?
Right. So most insurances nowadays offer like an online proof of
Okay.
insurance, or one that they can email to you, which would work for us.
Oh, okay.
So, and don't quote me on this because I'm not 100%. It's been a minute since I pulled people over, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to actually have your registration in the vehicle anymore.
Oh.
So.
What?
I know. Yeah.
So
Always.
I know there's other states that are doing this. I don't know where Utah's position is, because I know some states will say it's valid for a virtual driver's license. Is that the same thing with we could do with like our insurance and registration stuff?
So the driver's license is different. You have to actually have that in your possession.
Okay.
It's like, so if you get, let's say you don't have your driver's license on you and you get cited for it, usually you just say, hey, I have my driver's license, and the judge usually dismisses it. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but just having it on your person is a good idea, because usually you need ID anyway, right?
I mean, will they accept that? I mean, if we want to like make sure that we don't have documents inside the vehicle,
I know we accept insurance that way, and I'm pretty sure registration is you don't need it anymore on your vehicle.
Okay. It's no longer the license and registration, please.
I mean, I think we asked that anyway, just because it's on the movies, right? That's what we're supposed to ask. So.
Gives them something to do.
Yeah, right. We gotta make small talk up there. But when we run your license plate, it brings up. Usually, it says whether you're insured or not, as well as your expiration date and everything that we need to know about the vehicle anyway. So I think that's kind of the reason why they don't really care if you have it or not. So I never asked for it, to be fair. So. Any other questions?
So we're not supposed to keep those in the car. The fans are loud. I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Well, I was just saying that they ransacked through my glove compartment.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if they would have pulled information from my registration of the
They say
car.
know your name and address.
Yeah, but yeah.
Right, and I mean, and privacy's kind of gone out the window now with the internet, right?
Yeah.
So if you Google an address, usually you can find somebody's name. You know, it's on voting records.
Yeah.
It's on a lot of things.
So what is getting stolen though?
Nothing if they just go through it. So if there's nothing valuable in there,
Peace of mind.
Well, right, but obviously things can be taken.
right.
I think he's asking if all these vehicles are being hit, are there specific things that you're seeing from the neighborhood that are being stolen?
It's just a crime opportunity. So if they see something that's valuable to them, or they think that they can pawn or sell, or copper's usually huge too. So they collect a lot of wires, loose change. Tools is a huge one that we see. Cell phones, wallets, things like that.
I mean, honestly, if you walk through a parking lot and look in people's car, I'm surprised how much is left in people's cars.
Yeah.
So to me, I can easily see what they're looking for. Like, not that but I mean,
And you'd be
I
very
know, I'm
surprised
just-
how quickly it takes, right? So
just
like
wanted that
these criminals can
charger
hit your
so bad.
vehicle and be out in seconds. So they're after specific items or anything that looks valuable, and they're in and out of there pretty quick. So yes.
So I know, like, we've had a couple of instances where ironically somebody let off a security light, a motion sensor light, and somebody had they had witnessed that they were coming, coming from jiggling the car door or whatever, and then they go get in their vehicle and leave. What do we do at that point? I mean, are we calling 911 at that point and just saying, hey, there's somebody burglarizing our neighbor, or
Yeah,
what,
absolutely.
what do we
So
do at that point?
Any sort of suspicious activity, please call. Especially if you see something like that. And if you do see something like that, just like I said, be a good witness. Height, race, sex, what they're wearing, things like that could help us identify it. If they get into a vehicle, getting that license plate number would be huge. Do not approach them. Just try to gather as much information you can from a distance.
Well, and then that being said, I noticed, for example, because of that, like, I was sitting up on my balcony last night, 4 cars drove down this neighborhood about 9 o'clock at night. It was so dark, I couldn't have told you what color the car was. I really couldn't. So it's hard to see that stuff because we have one street light on this entire circle.
Petition the city for a
There's
street
one
light.
over there.
Yeah. Oh,
Above my
sorry.
grade.
My apologies. We have 2.
Darn it.
We have 2. But I mean, so are there things like that we can, are there things that we can do as a neighborhood to say, we'd like at least one more, or, maybe so it's not quite so dark, or is it just our responsibility to put security lights up?
So as far as streetlights go, that's something that you probably have to talk to the city council and things like that to try to get approval. But I mean, you can always, just for your peace of mind, put out floodlights and things like that, which would help. I know colors of vehicles, especially like a dark blue and a black, or things like that's super difficult to see. But do your best, gather as much information as possible. Another thing that you can do, and if you guys have seen this recently, I don't know if anybody's called in just to report the suspicious behavior, but you can also call and just do a property watch, or request an extra patrol. And what that does is the deputies the officers that are on duty at the time, it gets sent out like an email to every patrol officer, and it says, hey, we need you to spend more time in this area. So when they're not responding to calls for service or emergencies, they will It
John,
It's pretty much maxed.
Oh,
There's room right here.
okay.
It's pretty much
it's
maxed.
maxed. It's maxed out.
It's maxed out.
It's max?
Yeah. Maybe by the driveway over there.
I'll probably listen by the recording. That's private property.
Okay.
Where?
Whose property
I
is it?
got the recording. I got the recording.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
It's our property.
Sounds good. So
Okay, we request
yeah,
patrol?
so you can request extra patrol. So anybody
Right
can.
now?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
So I will just send an email to all patrols saying, hey, we need to watch this street. They've been having a lot of vehicle burglaries, and it just something for the people who are the officers who work graveyard or swing shift when they're not responding to those things. Just gives them something to do. You may see them drive by the neighborhood more often, things like that, to give you a little peace of mind. Obviously, we can't be there, and the odds of us being there in that exact moment when a crime's occurring is pretty rare. But hopefully, we say just our presence helps prevent crime. So like if we're just sitting on the side of a road, people don't speed, because even if we're just typing reports or doing whatever, people don't speed, even though we're not doing anything. So like even my vehicle parked right there, I'm not in it, I'm sitting here talking to you, but people driving by are looking and are more cautious, right? So just if they see a cop car leaving the neighborhood or entering the neighborhood or just in the area, it prevents a lot of crime too. So absolutely, I'll send that email out. Sometimes they forget after a few days, right? So maybe just keep calling or reminding, things like that. It's usually about after a week, they're like, don't know if they need to continue doing the
Nothing's
extra
happening.
patrol, right? So if you notice that there's less frequency, you can always call and request another one.
Call the police station or the 911.
You'd call just the non-emergency dispatch line. So 911's reserved for emergencies, but if you see something going on and you're like, I don't know if it's emergency and I can't remember the number, just call 911. That's what they do. Right? So, any other questions?
She's not doing well. I gotta go. How do we get the recording? Did you tell everybody?
We'll get that out to you.
Talk to Jeannie for a recording. Okay, thank you. I gotta go. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So if, I guess it would be helpful to know what kind of information officers convey to people that have had suspicious activity reported on them. I think sometimes people don't report things because they don't want to be involved, right? And so that might be helpful if you kind of select what's the standard the officers tell the person if they're showing up at their house or to their car. You know, is it just like suspicious activity's been reported and we want to know if they're involved, or is it so-and-so over there told us that you, right?
Right. So you can always be anonymous, but it's coming from our side. If somebody reports something anonymously, we don't have a victim, right? So we don't have somebody saying, we can't call that anonymous person and be like, what about them exactly was suspicious? Because sometimes things get lost in translation through dispatch to us. And they could say, they could give a whole long explanation why they think this person's acting suspicious. But if we go and they're just standing on the sidewalk, we have no constitutional right to stop them, right? And we have nobody to call to ask exactly why they were concerned. So I know it's hard because you don't want to be pointed out, or you don't want that person to somehow get the police report and know where you live and know that you reported. And I totally get that, and we get that too. So I guess that's just your judgment call. It does help us if we do actually have a complainant. So that's what we call them, a complainant. For instance, like if somebody's standing in the middle of the road yelling profanities, that's a disorderly conduct, right? But if only one person reports it and they're anonymous, we don't have anybody who was alarmed. We can't prove that anybody was alarmed. So that's where it kind of helps us, that we have like, hey, this person heard this and was alarmed. Not some anonymous person somewhere heard it, right? So, but yeah, when we do contact them, we say, hey, we got called here because somebody's saying you do this, or you've been doing this. And then we just kind of wait for their response and proceed with the investigation, So that's kind of where we're at, yeah.
So it sounds like it's really important that even if we think it might not be as much of a big deal, that we make that phone call every time, because the more phone calls you receive in that same area, the more attention it gets.
Exactly. If some person's casing this area, like the example you gave of surveilling the area, and every time they're here they get called in as a suspicious vehicle, I don't think they're going to come here anymore, right? Or if it's the same description of the vehicle, like this same vehicle has been coming in this area and they have no reason to be here, and we piece that together as officers. Yes.
So you had mentioned that, you know, just having the presence of a police vehicle is a deterrent. Is there something like that as far as, you know, I know when people have like expensive security systems, they have like that thing that says, you know, secured by ATT or whatever. Is there something like that for like a neighborhood or
Neighborhood watch signs, things like that we can post?
Yeah, I think there are neighborhood watch signs that you can post. I think you can buy those signs even if you don't really have a security system, and put them out in front of your house, which is a deterrent. Make sure that it's actually
illegal.
visible, because sometimes they put people put it like behind their bush, you know, and nobody's going to see that, especially in the middle of the night. So make sure that it's visible, and absolutely reporting things that may not seem significant can be huge. You know, I mean, I think serial killers have been caught on traffic stops, you know, for not like signaling. So something small may turn into something huge, and you may not even realize. So. Any other
Is there
questions?
more gang activity now, or more crime now? I guess now it's getting bigger. Are you seeing an uptake of economic as well? You know, that people are more desperate.
You know, I haven't seen. So, I guess before I worked for Logan, gangs were kind of a bigger deal here. Recently, they haven't been. There are small, usually little local gangs that are around, but they're usually not like you would see, like doing like extortion, things like that, like bigger gangs would do. Like in bigger cities, they're mainly just a group of people that are together that call themselves whatever. So, and usually they're just younger individuals that are involved in gangs, you know, and we don't normally have large adult gang members around here. It's usually 18 or younger that are involved, or say they're involved in gangs. So. Any other question? Yes.
How does a noise ordinance start being enforced when their neighbors up partying all night long or whatnot?
I used to know this. I did.
10 or 11?
I think it's 10 on the weekdays and 11 on the weekends.
Okay.
I think. Somewhere around there. I mean, like noise. You shouldn't be able to hear noise from opposing property lines.
Yeah.
Is usually kind of what we gauge it on, and even that, like normally we don't do something the first time we want to knock on the door and say, hey, turn it down, right? Like everybody wants you to turn down. If it doesn't turn down, then we have a little bit more justification for charges. We have codes inside city limits called like disorderly house. So if like it's a constant problem, or we get called there like 2 or 3 times in one night, we usually charge the homeowner or something like that. So call it in, and it just helps documentation wise for us, you know, because if we can say, you know, last Saturday we got called here for a loud party. Last Saturday we got called here for a loud party. This needs to stop, type of thing. So it's always important to call it in. We need something to do. So,
I'm assuming you keep this all on record.
yeah. So it goes into, we have a records software called Spillman. It has names of everybody who's ever been pulled over, warned, recalled, or mentioned in cases. It's got residents, you know, information, things like that. If somebody calls and says this house and they give an address, we can look back really like 10 plus years on that record of that house and see exactly what has been called there, whether that's like a domestic dispute or a house or things like that. Most of the time it's different owners, but we still get to see, and we can try to match the name, which also helps like with phone numbers too. So if somebody calls and hangs up, that number can be linked back to an individual who called and like a barking dog like 2 years ago or something like that. So just, yeah, everything's documented, everything's saved, so it helps us out a lot. I know it's kind of scary. It's okay though. We know everything about you.
I know. I know.
Is there any more information on the recent crimes? Like somebody saw a suspicious black car?
So I haven't looked at the specific area of this. but I haven't seen this area too much. This is a pretty safe neighborhood. We don't normally get a lot of calls in this neighborhood. It's I mean, Logan's pretty safe, and we have it's kind of sporadic. I mean, there's certain areas of the town that are higher than others, but you get different clusters of people living throughout the city, so there's really not like one particular area where it's like, oh, that's a bad neighborhood, you know. Yes.
If you do see something going on, like operation, so we had like a crazy couple weeks. One week we came home and there was like a SWAT team with like AR-15 standing outside, and we were like, oh, do we need to like get all the kids inside or whatever? And so we tracked down I don't know if it was I don't know the terminology for whoever the police boss was on charge, but I called and they said that can be just somebody getting a warrant served to them, and like they bring that much backup just in case. So that was good to know.
Yeah, we never fight fair, right? So we have to bring everybody.
They were ready to
yeah,
go.
so if we serve drug warrants, we have the whole thing on just for our safety, because we don't know whose house we're going into. If we usually if we're serving a warrant on a residence, we're gonna be all tacticaled up. So yeah, and if there is a safety issue, you would be notified. So we would knock on doors, surrounding doors, and the only time I think that would really happen is if there's like maybe a hostage barricade, we're pretty certain things are gonna go boom or something like that. We would go and tell people and things like that. But if you're not getting told, you're probably okay. So if you see that going on though, I don't come out and stand on the sidewalk. It's safer in your house, obviously, you know, and just try to. I know it's hard not to watch, but watch from a distance if you can. So yes.
So, you say this is a pretty safe neighborhood, and there's been incidents lately. Is it possible that people are coming from out of town and just making a quick sweep, and then they'll leave in 2 weeks, a week, a few days, and maybe we'll never see any help again?
That does happen. You know, I can't say that it is or it isn't because I don't know, but it is a possibility for sure. Normally, it's people who live local who have maybe been to a friend's house here in the neighborhood and have driven by maybe 1 or 2 times, like, and it's like, oh, I'll hit this street tonight and just see. Or sometimes people are people who use drugs are up all night usually and they have nothing to do, so they'll be walking around in the middle of the night and they'll just be walking down a street like this and just checking doors as they go wherever they go, right, in the middle of 3 in the morning. So, like I said, most of the time it's a crime of opportunity. So they see an unlocked car and they go in. They see an open garage door, they'll go in. They see an unlocked bike out, they'll take it. So, which happens a lot. Any questions? Yes.
Do you ever, do putting up things like the neighborhood watch, you know, that this is a place where we have a neighborhood watch, suspicious activity is reported to the police. Do you see that decreases that kind of thing at all? Like, does it make a difference? Do they pay attention to that stuff?
I don't know if it does or not, but it definitely doesn't hurt.
Okay.
So, having it up there definitely, if it wouldn't hurt anything, you know. I don't know if it makes a difference a lot or not, but if they do see it, I'm sure it would, you know.
If it's accompanied by a floodlight.
Yeah, sirens.
I'm assuming if we had that and then all those signs that say we all have security in every yard and all our lights are lit, and then I don't think anybody would be walking down that street.
Wasn't the street sign down there in the corner, wasn't there a neighborhood watch sign on it at one point?
Oh, I can't
Do you
remember.
remember that?
I think it got stolen.
That's not a good
When they
sign.
switched to the new signs, they didn't stop. I swear there was one there a while ago.
Well, you know, you talk about all the lights and everything, and I was telling that lady that I like watching the night sky, and it really hurts when there's a lot of light. But so on the one hand, I think I don't want a street light, but on the other hand,
Yeah, mountain's probably better for that anyway.
Well, there's
Not
lights
mountain's
that
probably better for that
don't
anyway.
shine up. You can get lights that don't shine up into the sky.
Yeah, I think mainly like if you like have them illuminating toward the road, that would be good. So every sidewalk is lit. You know, maybe there's a few dark spots here and there, but if they can't walk down the sidewalk without being lit up, then the likelihood of them going and taking that bike, because you never know who's watching, and they know
Yeah,
that.
what if you're walking by and you're picking your nose? That's no fun.
And we have a report of it. Any other questions? Yes.
Have there been many thefts of the catalytic converters in Logan?
So I had one, and it was from a furniture store, and they cut it from the bottom of a truck. But we haven't seen that up here. So
Our daughter just had hers stolen. Not
Really?
here. She's in Utah or in
Seattle.
Seattle.
Ooh, almost made a liar out of me. Yeah, we haven't seen that here. I know it's huge. I know in like Salt Lake they've been having a ton of those. So yeah.
Speaking of like, so the video cameras, the cameras, you know, that I know many of us have installed now, is it helpful to you guys, or do you guys ever take any of the footage from that when we have those? So, I mean, do we need to be downloading that kind of stuff to submit to you guys, or?
So we get it all the time. So it's helped. I don't know if you guys remember that little girl who was murdered a while ago, Lizzie.
Yes.
We took a lot of camera footage of the suspect on the Ring doorbells. So we do use it. We do take it. I maybe every few days just go through the footage and see if there's anything like, oh, that guy looked kind of weird, or then just save that. Make sure you don't delete that one, and then after a couple of months or a month, you can say, yeah, nobody asked if I had cameras, so we're done. I know when we do vehicle burglary cases and things like that, that's one of the things officers look for is cameras on the houses to see if there's any cameras that may have caught that activity. So it is something we look for, and yeah, we use it quite often.
Great.
So it is definitely helpful. So getting familiar with how to take that video clip and saving it, and then knowing how to send it like through an email or something like that, that's super helpful too, so that you're able and willing to do that. It'd be great. Any other questions?
You said that there's information in those pamphlets on if we decide to start a neighborhood watch program and how to do that. Is that registered, or?
Yeah, so it tells you to register through, I think, the Neighborhood Watch program. But it also has a bunch of information on like identity theft and scams and things like that. They may be little old pamphlets. I kind of dug them out at the middle of nowhere. So, but they are there. In the back parts of the book, they have the protecting your neighborhood and the vehicle and the house and things like that. But it's all, you know, making sure your doors and windows are locked, things like that. Just making sure if they're going to try to take something, it's extremely difficult for them to do it. So they usually give up. They're not super bright normally. So if you just make it difficult, they won't. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? How to get out of a speeding ticket? None of those ones?
Well, I was like, I'd like
How
to
much
know,
information
where do
you
you
want to share?
find like all of the city ordinances? Like, you know, like certain things that I would never know that was a city ordinance and I was being disobedient to that ordinance. Does that make sense? Because there's been times where it's like, I didn't know that was one. You know, so we in a conversation or whatever. And so, where would you find the most updated?
Okay. I know there's a website. I'm trying to think of it in my head, but it has all the city ordinances for like every city, and they're all updated. I don't know how they do it, but that's
Like in Cache
what
Valley, you mean, or just
like
Logan?
Logan City?
the like the United States. So it will have Logan in there, and that's primarily what we use is that website. I'm trying to think of it. It's like some company name that does it. It's killing me. I can't think of it, but
I thought they were on Logan City's website.
they probably are there too.
Cache County.
So
You know, because they change laws or they change things all the time. And for an example, I'm a cyclist, and so they just created a new law that we can go through a four-way stop if nobody's there, and without making a completed stop as a cyclist. That's if nobody's there. Somebody said that, and so I wanted to confirm that, and so I'm like, where do I go to confirm that? Does that make sense?
yeah. I don't know. Probably just look at the code, and then I don't know if that is in conjunction or in violation to state code, because normally when we write citations or things like that, it's usually not city ordinance violations. Usually it's state law and state code that we write citations for. So I would make sure you're.
So there's differences. There's a state and a city ordinance.
Sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And so I could get pulled over for either one of those.
Yeah. Usually they mesh really well together. Usually it's one and the same, right? Like they'll be littering or they'll be this, but like for instance, we have disorderly house, which is not a state code, that's a city ordinance.
Okay.
So we have the opportunity to charge that. There's a city ordinance, I think, for like parking in a handicap stall, but there's also a state code, so we can kind of choose, but most of the time we choose the state code because that's what we're more familiar with is state laws and things like that than it is the city code.
Okay.
I know there's an ordinance compliance officer with Logan City. I don't know his name, but I know he's there. So.
Okay. All right. So he does exist then. So
There,
he would be the one
I can
wanted.
confirm there is somebody that exists that knows these things.
Hey, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. I think this is awesome. You guys are awesome getting together and doing this. You know, it really helps us and make sure the whole neighborhood's on the same page. It's really cool. Yeah.
Just one other question. Is there anywhere we can get crime data for certain neighborhoods? Like, is there a place you can go to get this number of, low-level crimes were reported over a certain time frame to kind of gauge
Statistics and stuff.
as a neighborhood, what we could be doing better?
Yeah, I'm sure our administration usually does that. So like lieutenants and things like that, they know how to do all that, statistics and level things and like that. And it is, I know it's possible. I don't know how to do it, but I know there's people that at Logan City that you can. So if you just call the police department and request that, they can walk you through on how to request that and what information they can give. So, yes.
One more thing. So if you're with the noise ordinance, if you're doing like housework and stuff within the daytime and everything, do you guys do anything if somebody calls?
No, normally not. I mean, you're allowed to mow your lawn in the day, right, and things like that. We can't really enforce that type of stuff. Usually it's like in the early morning or late at night that we get the most calls. But usually it's like, oh, it's daytime, but what can we do? You know, people have to go do things and live their lives, so normally we don't do anything with that. So, anything else?
Is that it?
Cool.
I'm gonna stop this.